perfectionism. A driver of progress or a path to burnout. The difference between healthy commitment to quality and toxic perfectionism, its impact on life and relationships, and strategies for overcoming it. Introduction. Perfectionism is one of the most misunderstood psychological phenomena. Many people casually describe themselves as a perfectionist, implying diligence, ambition, and high standards. In popular culture, perfectionism is often portrayed as a positive trait, something that helps a person achieve more, strive for excellence, and stand out professionally. Yet, in real psychological practice, perfectionism is far from glamorous. In its toxic form, it is a mechanism of chronic stress, fear-driven behavior, compulsive control, avoidance of vulnerability, and ultimately, a path to mental exhaustion and emotional burnout. This analysis explores the dual nature of perfectionism. When it becomes a healthy driver of quality and growth, and when it transforms into a destructive force that undermines productivity, relationships, and self-worth. We will examine the internal mechanisms that maintain perfectionism. The fear of mistakes, the fear of judgment, early childhood conditioning, internalized parental expectations, cognitive distortions, and avoidance behaviors. We will also analyze how perfectionism shapes relationships, how it sabotages task completion, despite the paradox of high standards, and how people unknowingly program themselves for burnout. Finally, we will outline strategies and tools for transforming toxic perfectionism into healthy strive for quality, without self-destruction. Main Analysis 1. What perfectionism actually is, and what it isn't. Perfectionism is not simply wanting to do well. Perfectionism is a psychological defense mechanism built around the idea that self-worth must be earned through flawless performance. In healthy striving for excellence, effort and growth are central. In perfectionism, the absence of mistakes becomes the core value. A healthy achiever thinks, "I want to do this well, because it matters." A perfectionist thinks, "If I make a mistake, it means something is wrong with me." The difference is subtle but fundamental. One is motivated by growth, the other is motivated by fear. 2. Two types of perfectionism. Healthy perfectionism, excellence striving. High but realistic standards focus on improvement rather than flawlessness, the ability to complete tasks even when imperfect. Growth mindset. Mistakes equals feedback, pride in effort, not only outcome. Flexibility. Good enough for now. Toxic perfectionism, fear-driven perfectionism. Unrealistic, rigid standards, catastrophic interpretation of mistakes. Procrastination due to fear of imperfection, harsh self-criticism, inability to delegate or trust others. Chronic dissatisfaction, even with success. Emotional exhaustion. These two forms may look similar externally, both people work hard, but internally the psychological mechanisms are the opposite. 3. Childhood origins of perfectionism. Perfectionism rarely appears out of nowhere. Its foundation is formed in childhood, often through 1. Conditional approval. Children who receive praise only for achievements, performance, obedience, or being the good one start to internalize, "I am valuable only if I do everything right." They learn to hide mistakes, suppress needs, and overcommit. 2. Criticism or hypercontrol. When parents frequently correct, compare, or point out flaws. "Look how your brother does it. You should know better. Why isn't this perfect?" The child learns that mistakes are dangerous. 3. Enmeshment or parentification. Children who had to take responsibility too early, be strong, don't cause problems, develop a belief that they must be flawless to maintain emotional stability around them. 4. Modeling. If a parent themselves is anxious, controlling, or perfectionistic, the child absorbs this behavior as a template for navigating the world. Over time, these early experiences crystallize into a belief system. If I am perfect, I am safe. If I fail, I lose love. This belief often operates unconsciously long into adulthood. 4. Internal psychological mechanisms of perfectionism. Perfectionism is maintained through several layers of internal processes. A. Cognitive distortions. All or nothing thinking. If it's not perfect, it's worthless. Catastrophizing. If I make a mistake, everything will fall apart. Overgeneralization. I failed at this one thing, I always fail. Mind reading. They'll think I'm incompetent if I admit I need help. Unrealistic expectations. I must always perform at my best, no exceptions. These distortions create constant tension, fear, and pressure. B. Emotional mechanisms: fear of criticism, fear of rejection, shame associated with imperfection, anxiety around uncertainty, guilt for resting or slowing down. C. Behavioral mechanisms: overwork and overcommitment, avoidance of tasks due to fear of starting imperfectly, ritualistic checking and rechecking, difficulty delegating, micromanagement, chronic procrastination. Paradoxically, perfectionism often leads not to increased productivity, but to paralysis. 5. How perfectionism prevents task completion. It seems contradictory. Shouldn't perfectionism lead to finishing tasks better? But psychologically, perfectionism often leads to the exact opposite. Hey race why? 1. Fear of not meeting impossible standards. The brain interprets the task as a threat, not an opportunity. Example. A student doesn't start writing an essay because it must be brilliant. As a result, nothing is written. 2. Endless refinement. Perfectionists delay completion because something always needs fixing. The task becomes a bottomless pit. 3. Procrastination as avoidance. Procrastination is not laziness, it's a protective mechanism. By not starting, the person avoids confronting the possibility of imperfection. 4. Burnout leads to shutdown. Mental exhaustion makes tasks harder to start or continue, creating a vicious cycle. 6. How perfectionism destroys relationships. Perfectionism extends far beyond work, it deeply impacts personal dynamics. A. Unrealistic expectations toward others. The perfectionist evaluates others using the same rigid criteria they use on themselves. Partners, children, co-workers feel judged, controlled, or never good enough. This leads to conflict, distance, resentment, loss of intimacy. B. Emotional unavailability. A perfectionist fears vulnerability, mistakes, and emotional messiness. Relationships, however, require exactly that, imperfection. C. Overcontrol and micromanagement. Trying to control outcomes often translates into trying to control people. D. Defensive reactions. Perfectionists struggle to hear feedback, they interpret it as an attack on self-worth. E. Avoidance of emotional closeness. Sharing fears, insecurities, or failures feels dangerous to someone who believes they must appear flawless. Over time, relationships with a perfectionist often feel cold, tense, or exhausting. 7. Perfectionism and burnout. Chronic perfectionism is one of the clearest predictors of burnout. The mechanism is straightforward. Unrealistic demands, constant overexertion, emotional depletion, reduced performance, increased self-criticism, more overexertion. This loop can last years before the mind or body collapses. Signs of perfectionism-related burnout. Chronic fatigue, emotional numbness, difficulty concentrating, decline in productivity, detachment from activities, irritability, loss of joy. Burnout is not failure, it is the mind's attempt to protect the person from their own pressure. Practical section. Strategies to overcome toxic perfectionism. Below are structured, realistic methods grounded in cognitive behavioral principles, self-awareness, and emotional regulation. 1. Distinguish high standards from perfectionistic demands. Ask yourself, is this goal realistic? Does this task truly require perfection? What would good enough look like? This loosens rigid thinking patterns. 2. Reframe mistakes. Shift the internal narrative. Mistakes equals data, data equals learning, learning equals growth. The goal is not to remove fear instantly, but to teach the brain that mistakes do not equal danger. 3. Set process-based goals, not outcome-based ones. Instead of I must deliver a flawless result, use I will work on this for 45 minutes with focus. I will complete the first draft today with permission to be imperfect. This shifts motivation from fear to action. 4. Practice the imperfect first draft, especially effective for writing, projects, presentations. Commit to creating a deliberately imperfect version. It trains the nervous system to tolerate incompleteness. 5. Use controlled exposure. Like all fear-based patterns, perfectionism improves through gradual exposure. Examples. Send an email without rereading it 10 times. Allow someone else to do a task you usually control. Share a draft early. Small exposures reduce fear over time. 6. Challenge cognitive distortions. Ask, is it true that a small mistake ruins everything? Would I talk to a friend the way I talk to myself? What evidence supports this fear? This interrupts catastrophizing. 7. Practice self-compassion. Self-compassion isn't self-pity, it is emotional regulation. Tell yourself, I'm allowed to be imperfect. Many people struggle with this. I am learning. This builds psychological safety. 8. Delegate and share responsibility. Delegation requires trust, both in others and in oneself. Start with small tasks. Over time, it reduces overcontrol and decreases chronic stress. 9. Establish boundaries around effort. Perfectionism often makes people overcommit. Practice. I can't take this on right now. This is my maximum for today. This task is not worth the extra energy. 10. A practical checklist before starting a task. What is the purpose? What is the minimum viable version? What is my time limit? During the task, am I improving the result or calming my anxiety? Am I stuck because of fear? Can I accept the current version as good enough? After the task, what worked? What was unnecessary? What will I do differently next time? Regular repetition retrains perfectionistic habits. Conclusion: perfectionism is not a simple personality trait. It is a complex psychological structure built from early experiences, cognitive distortions, and emotional defenses. In its healthy form, it drives excellence, discipline, and personal growth. But in its toxic form, it becomes a prison, one made of fear, tension, and impossibly high expectations. Toxic perfectionism does not make life better, it makes life narrower. It undermines relationships, delays progress, and leads to burnout. Yet, perfectionism is not permanent. It can be transformed. When a person learns to tolerate imperfection, interpret mistakes as information, separate their worth from their performance, and establish realistic boundaries, quality of life improves dramatically. Productivity rises, relationships soften, creativity flows, and work becomes meaningful rather than threatening. The goal is not to abandon high standards. The goal is to stop using them as a measure of self-worth. Healthy striving for excellence is grounded in curiosity, mastery, and growth. Toxic perfectionism is grounded in fear. Learning the difference between the two is one of the most liberating psychological shifts a person can make, and one of the most important steps toward a life that is not only successful, but sustainable, balanced, and emotionally fulfilling.